The movie begins by showing Shinozaki Rui, a man living a cramped and modest existence in the bustling metropolis of Tokyo. He starts his day with a part-time job as a sake delivery boy and supplements his income by working as a parking attendant. As he finishes his delivery route, he is introduced to his new boss, who escorts him to the parking lot where he will be working. To Rui's surprise, the small room assigned to him is in a state of disarray, and the manager reveals that the previous occupant, an older man, had vanished without a trace the previous night. As the night wears on, Rui begins his shift as a parking attendant, using the television to keep himself awake in the lonely hours of the night. Suddenly, a blind woman named Kashiwagi Akari arrives, mistaking Rui for the old man who usually guards the parking lot. She brings him food as a gesture of kindness, and the two begin to bond over their shared love of television. As Akari realizes her mistake, she apologizes and inquires about the old man's whereabouts. Rui tells her that the man must have resigned, and Akari prepares to leave, but the heavy rain forces her to accept Rui's invitation to take shelter in the parking post. As they watch television together, Rui is struck by Akari's ability to enjoy the broadcast despite her blindness. He begins to see the world in a new light as he learns about Akari's perspective and experiences. When the rain subsides, Akari says goodbye to Rui and gives him some of her homemade food as a gift. She reminds him to take care of the mugwort plants that the old parking guard had planted. Rui gratefully accepts the food and eats it after his shift. The next day, Akari goes to work as a customer service representative at a company, while Rui visits a gym where he meets Ochi, the chairman, and his coach Harada Jin. Rui apologizes for his sudden decision to quit boxing a few years ago, and Ochi seems unwilling to forgive him. Ochi urges Rui to return to boxing, but Rui declines the offer. That night, Rui sees Akari approaching the guard post and quickly opens the door to let her in. He thanks her again for the delicious food she gave him the previous day. The two of them watch a drama on television together. Akari suddenly asks Rui to open the window, citing an unpleasant smell coming from Rui's feet. Embarrassed, Rui quickly realizes that he had forgotten to put on his shoes and quickly puts them on. Akari explains that her sense of smell and hearing has become more acute since she lost her sight. She even jokingly guesses Rui's age, but he doesn't mind. After watching television together, Rui washes his feet and gives Akari a peach as a gesture of gratitude. Despite having met several times, the two of them have yet to introduce themselves. Akari finally tells Rui her name, even though he doesn't tell her his. From then on, Rui makes a conscious effort to maintain personal hygiene and cleanliness, as he doesn't want to make Akari uncomfortable again. One day, after Akari finishes watching a drama on television and begins to walk home, she is almost hit by a car and falls on the sidewalk, injuring her leg. Rui rushes to her aid and drives her home. He even carries her up the stairs to her house, as she is having difficulty walking. Upon arriving at her house, Akari asks Rui to fix a clogged waterway and thanks him for his help by giving him 2 concert tickets, as a sign of gratitude. She initially suggests that Rui invite his friends to the concert, but when she learns that he doesn't have any friends, she offers to go with him instead. Rui is overjoyed at the opportunity to go to the concert with Akari. The next day, Akari goes to the salon and dresses up for the concert, excited to spend the evening with Rui. Inside the concert hall, Akari, who is sitting next to Rui, expresses interest in the violinist performing on stage, and Rui happily explains the musician's performance to her, making her happy. After the concert, the two of them decide to have dinner together at a barbecue restaurant, which Akari had never been able to visit before because she couldn't grill meat alone. During their meal, Akari talks about her family and how they used to invite her to barbecue restaurants together. But when she asks about Rui's work and past, Rui becomes offended as he doesn't like people being too curious about his life, which makes the atmosphere awkward. After dinner, Rui walks Akari to the door of her house. Akari expresses her gratitude for Rui's company throughout the day. Just before she enters her home, Rui, feeling guilty for his behavior at the restaurant, decides to open up to her and tells her his name, age, and profession as a boxer before becoming a parking attendant. He explains that he has been through a lot of difficult experiences and has been trying to forget his past by not talking about it to others. Akari tries to understand and apologizes for asking something that made him uncomfortable. The next day, Akari is summoned to her boss, Ozaki Takafumi's office, where he tells her he wants to give her a birthday present and makes advances towards her. Akari is clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but she is saved by one of her colleagues, who is also blind, who enters the room to tell her that she has received a phone call from a customer, allowing her to leave immediately. At a restaurant, Ochi and Jin meet with Rui to persuade him to return to boxing, but Rui still refuses their request. Ochi is curious about Rui's reasoning and questions him about his whereabouts a few years earlier. Unfortunately, Rui remains silent and does not answer the question. Jin tries to convince him that he has the ability to become a boxing champion. Rui continues to remain silent, and Ochi says goodbye to leave. As they are leaving, Rui finally reveals that he disappeared because he was serving a prison sentence of 3 years. A few years earlier, when Rui met Jin and began training as a professional boxer, he secretly fought on the streets for extra money, even working as a handyman for a mobster, and hurting people who were targeted by the gang. One day, Rui beats up a man named Sakamoto Suzumu who is considered a traitor to the mob, and the police eventually arrested Rui for his actions. In the morning, Rui visits the orphanage where he grew up to meet with Ura Mieko, a nurse who has taken care of him since childhood. Mieko is happy to see Rui and invites him to watch the orphanage children as they make handicrafts. She also asks Rui about his involvement with the mob in the past and the crimes he has committed. Rui proudly shows her the fading mark of the mafia group on the back of his hand, indicating that he no longer has any ties to the group. Rui asks Mieko to change his name so he can start anew, but Mieko tells him that he doesn't need to change his name. What's important is that he tries to change for the better. Mieko then gives Rui a hair tie and asks him to give it to the special person in his life. At night, when Akari returns home, she is surprised to find Takafumi waiting for her in front of her house. Although Akari tries to convince Takafumi to talk somewhere else, like a cafe, since he says he wants to talk about work, he forces his way into her house. He becomes angry when he sees that she has not opened the gift he gave her earlier. He rudely pulls her onto a chair and puts a necklace on her, a gift from him. He then tries to kiss her, but she resists and he becomes angry, beating her repeatedly. Just as he is about to harass her again, Rui comes and physically attacks him, severely beating him up and even breaking one of his fingers. After Takafumi leaves, Rui approaches Akari, who is disappointed in him for beating up Takafumi, fearing it will lead to her losing her job. Rui tells her that he will take responsibility for her, but Akari insists that it will only make her suffer more. Rui, understanding her point of view, decides to leave and gives her the hair tie that Mieko had given him. The next day, Akari meets Rui at the parking lot guard post to tell him that she has resigned from her job and asks him to take her somewhere while he is off. Rui, wanting to prove that he is willing to take responsibility, agrees to her request. Sometime later, Rui takes Akari to a beach where his mother had taken him as a baby with the intention of ending their life together, but Rui ultimately survived the incident. Akari then asks Rui to look for a stone with a smooth surface and explains that just like a rock that is initially rough, but becomes smooth over time after being eroded by water, people can also heal and improve with time. Akari then gives the stone to Rui and says that it is a talisman that will connect the two of them. As time passed, Rui finally decided to return to boxing training and put in extra effort in his part-time job so that he could support Akari, as promised. He also gives Akari a guide dog to accompany her while he is away. With the sincerity of his love, Rui removes the door barrier that could harm Akari and opens the window coverings to let sunlight into her room. Day by day, Rui is determined to become the best boxer with Akari's support, and one day, he is able to defeat his opponent and win a match. At night, Rui expresses his desire to win more boxing matches so that he can help Akari open a pottery shop, which has been her dream all along. One day, Rui wins an important match, and without realizing it, Sakuma Kiyosuke, his former boss from when he was working as a bouncer, comes to watch the match. When Rui and Jin return home, Kiyosuke suddenly appears and asks Rui to return to work with him, but Rui firmly rejects the offer and chooses to leave Kiyosuke immediately. The next day, Akari takes Rui to visit her parents' grave and tells him about the events that led to her blindness. She recounts how when her family went on an excursion, she insisted on driving despite having just gotten her license. On the way, she saw someone falling from a building which made her lose focus and caused a car accident that resulted in the deaths of her parents and the loss of her eyesight. After hearing Akari's story and realizing the date of her parents' death, Rui is filled with guilt and regret. He realizes that the incident happened on the same day as the one where he had beaten and killed Sakamoto Suzumu, who had set himself on fire and fell from a building, leading to Rui's arrest and conviction for murder. Rui feels guilty because the accident that happened to Akari is related to his past mistakes. One night, Rui meets Kiyosuke, who asks him to return to the streets to make more money, but Rui firmly rejects the offer because he doesn't want to go back to his dark past. When Rui gets home, he is surprised to find the kitchen in a mess and Akari in the hospital due to a fall. At the hospital, the doctor informs Rui that Akari has a fracture in her ribs and will have to wear a rib support for a while. The doctor also reveals that the retinal detachment Akari suffered in her accident will continue to worsen and could result in her losing her sight completely if left untreated. Rui, consumed by grief and guilt, makes a pilgrimage to see Mieko. In a moment of raw vulnerability, he reveals to her that he has not been able to forgive himself for his past mistakes and fears that his presence is bringing misfortune to those he loves. Mieko, ever the voice of reason, reminds Rui that the only person who has not yet forgiven him is himself. Feeling a renewed sense of determination, Rui sets out to visit Akari at the hospital. He is driven by a burning question: why had she never sought treatment for her eyes, despite still having a chance to heal? Akari's answer is a sobering one. She explains that even if her eyes were to heal, they would not bring back her parents. In her blindness, she finds a measure of solace, a way to alleviate some of the guilt she feels over their loss. But Rui is not content to let Akari wallow in her guilt. He implores her to stay strong and fight for her future. He tells her that he wants her to see the happiness and beauty of the world with her own eyes, especially when she gets married and has children in the future. He reminds her that the past is behind us and that we must look forward and strive for a better tomorrow. A few days after his visit to Akari, Rui makes a startling discovery. He sees the emblem of the Kyosuke Mafia group on the door of her house. His heart races as he realizes that Akari must be in danger. He quickly sets out to find Kyosuke, determined to put a stop to whatever scheme he had in mind. When he finally tracks down the leader of the group, Rui doesn't mince words. He tells Kyosuke that he wants him and his gang to leave Akari alone and that he will do whatever it takes to ensure her safety. Kyosuke, unperturbed, agrees to Rui's demands, but with one condition: Rui must win a street boxing match that will be held soon. Rui, without hesitation, accepts the challenge. He knows that this is his chance to protect Akari and secure the funds needed for her eye surgery. He asks Kyosuke to pay him the prize money in advance so that he can use it to finance the surgery. With a newfound sense of purpose, Rui meets with Akari one last time before the match. He sees her off as she prepares to undergo the surgery, takes care to collect all the photos of her, and burns them so that Kyosuke and his group will not be able to find her again. With the match looming and Akari's future in his hands, Rui steels himself for the fight of his life. As Rui arrives at the venue for the match, he is hit with a surprise. Kyosuke has changed his opponent, and Rui must now face a much stronger fighter. Rui quickly realizes that Kyosuke has set him up to lose, so he can claim the prize money for himself. But Rui is not one to back down from a challenge. The match begins, and Rui's opponent immediately takes the offensive. Rui is beaten to a pulp, but he refuses to give up. He rallies, determined to protect Akari and secure her future. The opponent continues to pound Rui, but he refuses to stay down. He rises again and again, fueled by his love for Akari and his determination to see her through her surgery. Finally, in a miraculous turn of events, Rui manages to defeat his opponent. The crowd erupts in cheers as Rui stands victorious. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Akari's eye surgery went smoothly and she was finally able to see again. A few days after his victory, Rui uses the prize money to help those he cares about. He sends half of it to Akari to help with her recovery and the rest to Sakamoto Maiko, the wife of the late Suzumu. Rui wants to make sure that his actions have a positive impact on the people he cares about. But Rui's actions do not go unnoticed. Kyosuke, furious at having lost the bet, sends his men after Rui. One day, as Rui is walking down the street, a car driven by Kyosuke's henchmen hits him and they proceed to stab him until he lay helpless on the ground. Rui's whereabouts are unknown, and Akari is left to grieve his disappearance. She is heartbroken, not knowing what happened to Rui. One day, Akari receives a music box in the mail, addressed to Rui. She immediately visits Mieko to find out who sent it. Mieko reveals to Akari the truth about Rui's guilt over causing her accident several years ago, and how he had loved her sincerely. Akari can only cry as she listens to Mieko's words, feeling a deep sense of loss and sorrow over Rui's absence. 2 years pass and Akari tries to move on with her life. She opens a pottery shop and uses her massage skills to volunteer at the hospital. She wants to help others and find a sense of purpose. One day, as she is volunteering, Akari is assigned to massage a patient named Yadai Takahashi. She does not recognize the patient as Rui, as he has changed his appearance and identity. Rui, now known as Yadai, lies on the table as Akari begins to massage him. He is overcome with emotion, as he holds the beach stone that Akari had given him before he disappeared. As the seasons change, Rui is eventually discharged from the hospital. He has a severe leg injury and must use a crutch to walk. He decides to visit Akari's pottery shop, to buy a plant as a reminder of her. As he enters the shop, he sees a music box that reminds him of his memories with Akari, and he is overwhelmed with emotion. He starts to cry. As Rui leaves the shop, Akari's dog starts to chase after him, barking loudly. Akari, who is confused, apologizes to Rui, not realizing that the man she had just met was the Rui she had known and loved. But when she returns to the shop, her employee tells her about a man who had used a cane and was crying after seeing the music box on display. Akari immediately realizes that the man was Rui. She rushes out of the shop to find him. At the climax of the film, Rui, consumed by guilt and regret, makes his way to the sea with the intention of drowning himself. But just as he steps into the water, Akari finally catches up to him and stops him from going through with it. She takes him home, and they begin to heal and move forward together. The moral that can be learned from this movie is that we cannot truly understand or appreciate the good things in life without first experiencing the bad. Without pain, we cannot become strong. Without sadness, we cannot understand the meaning of happiness. And without loss, we cannot understand the sincerity of love. It is through these struggles that we learn to appreciate the beauty of life and the people who are a part of it.